Welcome to part 2 of Christian Symbolism in the Planets. In this video, we'll discuss the planet Venus, related scriptures, and what it can tell us about Jesus Christ. For some background, let's first go over a few characteristics of this planet. Covered in thick, reflective clouds, Venus is the brightest object in the night sky, after the moon, of course. It's often called Earth's sister planet because it is similar in size, mass, and composition. Because of its position between the Earth and the Sun, it has a unique motion across the sky, never straying too far from the Sun. It's usually seen a few hours before sunrise or after sunset. This is why it was called anciently the morning and evening star. Regarding the term morning star, in the end-time book of Revelation, chapter 22, verse 16, it reads, "I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star." Just as Venus shows up as a bright morning star, which heralds the new day and the coming of the sun, Jesus' coming also heralds the beginning of a new day, when at his second coming shall, quote, "the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings." Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. In fact, in the same chapter of Revelation where we find the term morning star, it discusses the topic of the new millennial day, which follows Christ's coming. See Revelations chapter 22, 1 through 6. In verse 13 of Revelation chapter 22, Jesus proclaims that he is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Venus also points to this title of Christ in that it signals both the beginning of a day and the end of a day, depending on where it is in its orbit. I think it's no coincidence that the term morning star appears in a chapter that concerns the second coming, because Venus shares yet another characteristic with the return of the Messiah. It has to do with the color red. Isaiah chapter 63 speaks of the second coming as a, quote, "day of vengeance," when Christ will return to redeem his people clothed in red. See verses 2 and 3. Venus likewise appears clothed in red each time it accompanies a sunset or sunrise, which commonly appear in shades of red. So when Venus sets with the sun, it symbolizes to me the setting of an old world with its earthly kingdoms. On the other hand, rising with the sun, it heralds the beginning of a new world and Christ's heavenly kingdom on earth. In regards to Earth and Venus being sister planets, I made an interesting discovery in Song of Solomon, chapter 4. In poetic form, Solomon uses the word sister in talking to his bride. Biblical commentators reveal in the culture of the time, sister was an affectionate term for one's wife. The idea of a bride, then, brings us back to Revelation chapter 21, where the second coming of Christ is likened to a wedding, or a groom coming for his betrothed, in other words, the church. Verse 9 says, "Come hither, I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife." This imagery is shown elsewhere in Scripture too, such as the parable of the 10 virgins and the wedding feast. Finally, some associate Venus with Mary, the mother of Jesus, and there are those who have speculated that a rare conjunction of Venus and Jupiter may have been the so-called new star over Bethlehem that signaled the birth of Jesus Christ. In this case, Venus may represent not only the second coming of Jesus, but his first coming as well. As when the scriptures say he came to preach good tidings unto the meek, to bind up the brokenhearted, etc. See Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1. In regards to Christ's first coming, in the orbit of Venus, we see a type of Christ when he died on the cross and rose again 3 days later. After half of Venus's orbit, the planet sinks into the sunset and then rises again in the sunrise. Interestingly, it does take Venus roughly 3 days to transit the sun. In Roman mythology, the goddess Venus represented love. I think love is a good interpretation for this planet, given all the symbols in Venus that point to the coming of Christ. As the scriptures say, "For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." The love of God led Christ to lay down his life for us. That same love promises his second advent when he will rise again with healing in his wings and return for his bride. Out of all the names for Christ, the one that I think best fits Venus is the name that means God is with us. That is, Emmanuel. See Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. I hope you enjoyed this video and have learned something new and strengthened your faith. Come back next time when we'll explore Christian symbolism in the planet Mars. Until then, remember, to be spiritually minded is life eternal.